Hello everyone. It's still cold in the north. We've gone through this bitter cold spell, but a lot of people in the south are showing you their boat wraps. They're showing you their boat setups. Everybody's thinking about spring. Well, some people in Florida might get to experience it. Up here in the north, we're still thinking about it. But a lot of people are accumulating gear and equipment for their boat for this upcoming open water season. And I wanted to take some time here and show you a few things, a few of the equipment pieces that I put on my boat and I think are useful for me to be successful on the open water. I've expanded upon some things from last year and have some new things for this year. Stay tuned and I'll show you some of those and answer some questions about why I'm choosing what I'm choosing to put on my boat. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is electronics, and I've made the decision to use a couple of different kind of electronics, a couple of different brands of electronics. I'm not sponsored by any, but I'm using them for specific purposes. First thing that I'm going to do is at the console this year, I'm going to use the Humminbird. This is the Mega side image unit, the Helix 9. With Mega side imaging, Mega down imaging. This Mega unit, in my opinion, for side imaging is the best in the business. Others have side imaging. I've used others, but the Mega side imaging is by Humminbird is the best in my opinion. So I've got I'm going to use this 9 at the console. I've got a 7 Mega down imaging unit that I'm going to use at the bow. One of the two pieces of electronics I'm going to use at the bow, and that 7-inch Mega down imaging unit is hooked up to the Mega down imaging transducer in the Minn Kota Terrova trolling motor that I've got at the bow, and that trolling motor's got of course the built-in Mega down imaging transducer, and it also has the iPilot functionality. So there's 3 network connections then that have to occur within my boat in order to successfully make connection and talk to all those pieces. And so I've picked up the 5-port Ethernet switch from Humminbird. This 5-port, you need it when you're going to connect 3 or more devices. I have my 9, I have the 7, and then I have the iPilot all connect and talk to each other through this 5-port Ethernet switch from Humminbird. To get that to work, you've got to have 2 things. You've got to have Ethernet cable, and so I've picked up the right lengths to get from each unit, from this unit, the 7, and the iPilot all have to be Ethernetted over to the switch, and then from the Ethernet cable that you get for each device, you have to pick up the built-in adapter. And so that's basically this dongle adapter allows you to connect up the device to the Ethernet cable, and the Ethernet cable connects up to the Ethernet switch. And you do that with all 3 units. In this case, the units are the 9, the 7, and the iPilot. And then I'll have control over the trolling motor from my graph. I'll have waypoint network connection from my unit at both the bow and the console with each other. So if I'm driving around, which I spend a ton of time doing, just idling around, side imaging, finding key pieces of structure, cover, or fish, and I mark a waypoint, I don't have to then go up and mark a waypoint on the front. It's done automatically, and then vice versa. When I'm up front at the bow and I find something that I want to record, I save a waypoint, and then that waypoint, of course, is networked and saved back here. You can also network the actual function and images up to the other units. So if I'm standing up front, I can see my side image from the bow, so that allows some additional functionality up at the bow. So it's definitely worth it if you've got, and that's why I get the Humminbird units. The best in the business, in my opinion, side imaging, a really nice down imaging, connects up with my Minn Kota Tarova with iPilot functionalities. So then I get it all tied together and networked up appropriately and properly using this the cables, the adapters, and the switch. So that is kind of the main part of the initial part of the electronics, and that takes care of console, bow, and then also up at the bow, I've got of course, the Garmin Livescope, and a lot of guys talking about it, a lot of guys use it. You saw it successfully used in some Bassmaster events last year. You saw people using it almost exclusively on the Detroit River in an event where they were picking off smallmouth that were roaming out in front of them and drop shotting to them. Or in the case of the Texas event, was one with a jerkbait actually seeing the fish positioned on vertical cover and fishing them then with a jerkbait. So phenomenal uses. I had one last year on the bow. I sold my previous boat with it on it. I had a ton of luck, and there were features that I hadn't perfected. There were settings that I hadn't perfected. I've learned a lot. I'll include what I've learned in a separate video here. But definitely the settings and some of the capabilities are incredible. It helped me a lot last year, learning perspective mode, seeing cover and structure that I didn't know was there out in front of me, and being able to make precise casts to it, I thought was invaluable. I didn't see a ton of fish on my perspective mode last year. I expected a little more, but I was only using a 7-inch screen up front, and so this year I've gone with the Garmin, or the Garmin 1022, the Echomap 1022. Now this is a 10-inch unit. It's a high definition unit. It's a in the GPSMAP series, so it's an Echomap GPSMAP 1022, and it's got dials and buttons on the side. And don't let that fool you; it's not touchscreen. This is still plenty expensive, but to get the 10-inch high def screen, it was a step above the 9s that are out there in packaged combos. This was still reasonably priced, and I've already used this dial and button functionality, vertical menus, real easy to switch between menu options. So don't be scared away from using the push button or dial to get the value of this 10-inch screen and to get the functionality and the separation and picture quality that comes with that high def screen. It's a big leap forward, I think, from the 9s. It will help me see things in perspective mode that I liked last year, but maybe that I couldn't see, like fish swimming through my perspective view. I think I'll be able to see this. I'll have probably a much easier time in forward. Down was pretty good last year. I mean, I could jig fish up in down view, not a problem, pretty awesome. But in forward view with range control, some functions here, I think, and some resolution that will help me see fish better in forward and in perspective. So this is a value, this 1022, if you're looking for a 10-inch unit. Don't be afraid of that 1022. I know a lot of guys are moving in that direction. So I've got that for the bow. So at the bow, I'll have the Garmin unit set up with Panoptics. I'll have the 7-inch Humminbird Helix mega down imaging. And then at the console, I'll have the Helix 9 with the mega side imaging and mega down imaging and network capability to my Humminbirds throughout. So that's a start with the electronics. Okay, now to power the electronics, of course, the unit at the console and the unit at the bow will be wired up to batteries. They don't draw a lot of power. They're not a big power draw. Not much of a concern to take your accessory battery down. I do some things with my power system that help keep my accessory battery used exclusively for all my accessories, and cut off then from my boat starting battery. And then it allows charge switches, so when I'm running and my alternator on my motor is charging, it's charging the battery that is not been cut off. So I do some protection with that, and I'll do a video quick on how I wire that up and how I do that later. But in the front, I've made a power decision. Last year I used some of the lithium batteries, and I hooked them up in parallel. And you get 36 hours of runtime on one of these. For instance, this one's a Norsk lithium battery. This is an LFP battery. It's lithium. The LFP stands for some of the chemistry items: lithium, iron phosphate, some of the chemistry within the battery. But this battery starts at 12 volts and then drains down from there. And even though I had them hooked up in parallel, so I had a lot of 12 volts and a lot of runtime capability, what happened is it started at 12 and then it drained from there. So quickly I'm down to 11.7 on my Livescope, and then I'm at 11.2, and then the day goes on, and eventually I'm in the 10s and lower. And I noticed performance issues with my Livescope with that. So rather than going with these, which they're lightweight and nice, this year I went to the Amped Outdoors. This one's a 32 amp hour, 14.8 volt lithium ion NMC battery. This is nickel manganese. It's different chemistry. I'm going to put a link in the description below to an article piece that I put together that talks about these two batteries in the differences and the trade-offs in performance about these two. So this one, again, 32 amp hours. It's designed at its peak charge. When it's charged up full, it comes in at 16.8 volts. They put on here that it's a 14.8 volt battery. That's an average voltage through the range of charged and out. But it charges up at 16.8, and then it eventually goes down over time to 12, not from 12 to 10. It goes to 12, and the cutoff is 12, and that's the technology in this battery that helps that Livescope performance perform at an optimal image quality, etc., through the charge cycle. So I can hook up the actual black box that everybody refers to, the Livescope black box, and my 1022 Garmin together, and I can get easy 10 hours or more out of that together, using full power on both units. And the power settings do make a difference because it's the amperage you're using in your device that actually determines how long these batteries will last against their operating capacity. So I have this amped hour, 32 amp hour amped outdoors battery. This will go up front. I've got room in my Crestliner Fishhawk up front to have my battery source very, very near these components. And that's where you can get some other performance issues with batteries and running long, thin cables, or people are using 10 gauge cables to transfer their battery power to some of these power hungry devices like the Livescope is. So this way, this is very near. There's no resistance loss or voltage drop due to resistance through thin wires when I've got the battery right next to the units that they're operating. I just happen to have that space available, easy to charge then, easy to access for me, and my Livescope system is then separate from my other power systems in the boat. That worked really well for me last year, mocking up batteries in parallel. This year I've got a workhorse powerhouse battery from Amped Outdoors that I'm going to try. I've been using it ice fishing. I love it so far. So good results there. Power that Livescope system very nicely.